turning our attention now to HbbTV in an IP-only or IP-first world. And our first speaker for this session is someone who's been very active in the HbbTV Association, also in the DVB project, and with many different companies down through the years in the general wider ecosystem. And that is Matthew Huntington. And Matthew is going to ask the question about HbbTV in an IP-only world. Why do we need HbbTV for broadband-only television? Matthew, over to you.
You, Owen. A little bit of, well, first of all, I'm hoping that I'm going to give a nice kind of easy presentation to warm everyone up after lunch. So hopefully easy to digest, but thought-provoking all the same. And sort of an introduction to myself, I'm an independent consultant doing product and marketing strategies, mainly for media tech companies. But as Owen has said, I've been involved in HbbTV since its very inception, but I've kind of come and gone over the years, caused a bit of trouble, and then walk away for a few years. But currently, what I do for HbbTV is I'm the manager of the developer program, and my mission there is to foster innovation through a vibrant development community. And I do that in two ways. One is I look after the developer portal. We are trying to create a place where developers can go to get the information that they need, be that useful and interesting articles, and very importantly, a definitive set of API documentation. I also run a Slack community for developers where I kind of try and bring them together and get them talking and helping each other. So if you have developers back home in your company who are not part of that Slack community, come and find me over the next day and a half, and I'll give you some information so they can join that community. So that kind of pitch over and done with. What led me to this speech was when I tell people that I'm doing some work for HbbTV, they quite often ask me, is that still a thing? You know, didn't that happen several years ago? So, as Vincent pointed out earlier, I start off by saying that we've reached 100 million devices, and I think actually that's just Europe alone, 100 million devices. And we have many use cases that the technology is being used from. Enhanced TV, interactive advertising, VOD, EPGs, lots of things that are being used for. And what's more, we've got beyond the experimentation phase. People are running these services not as an experiment, but to make money. So these are successful services that are out there. And just an example, a slice of looking at that success, we had, and I hope I got the number right here, 33 entries for the awards this year. And so later on this evening, you'll see the shortlisted ones, but there was a great set of broader applications that people are promoting. So the next thing, having got that point across, they say, yeah, but HbbTV, it's only really for broadcast, and the future is all IP. So that sort of then put the question to myself, which is, well, is HbbTV needed in an all-IP world, whether that's an all-IP home, an all-IP device, an all-IP service, or indeed, in fact, an all-IP country, which maybe being here today is harder to see, but in the UK, something that we're very much considering. So to answer this, is HbbTV needed? I thought, well, maybe we should go back in time and say, well, why was HbbTV needed in the first place? Why did we create it? And therefore, if the reasons that we created HbbTV are still valid in an all-IP world, then that's why it's needed. So, what is HbbTV? Well, it's a standard way of building interoperable HTML applications for televisions. That's the job that it does. And it's also useful to know that there are two types of applications for HbbTV. There's broadcast-related ones, so where an application is bound to a television channel, very much part of that TV channel. But we also have broadcast-independent applications. So these are just ordinary, they're just HTML applications to you and me, and they may be launched from a portal or from another HbbTV application. And potentially in showing you this list, we're seeing that maybe the word broadcast is not quite the right word to be using there, but a little bit more on that later. Also, a little bit of history about how HbbTV came to come about. Because actually, back in sort of 2007 or so, the fact that you would use HTML on televisions and it would be a core technology wasn't actually fully defined at that stage. But around 2008, it became clear that interactive experiences would be built in HTML and JavaScript, and that the other contenders, Java, ActionScript, Flash, were all losing out to that. And we had a number of proprietary solutions out there developing HTML for television. We had some industry specifications, but they tended to be industry-specific, and we had some country-specific developments. So back in 2008, both France and Germany were trying to develop HTML specifications for television. And so in that, HbbTV was born to really harmonize these efforts. But if you've decided to put HTML on a television to provide your interactive experiences, isn't that enough? Do you need anything else? Can I just say, we're going to put HTML on the television, job done? Well, it's not. And I'd say that there's two reasons for that. You may have more, but basically, your standard specification for HTML is missing functionality, or certainly was in 2008. So we needed to add things to HTML to make it work on television. And the other one is interoperability, which I'll cover off in a few minutes. So if you look at a standard environment, you've got a browser and a web page working together, and it's really just the interaction between the browser and the web page you have to worry about. But on television, it's slightly different because you've got the TV channels that people are watching, you've got the native user experience of the television that people are using to control the television, you've got the underlying browser and television operating system, and then you've got your interactive applications you're trying to provide to consumers. A much more mixed environment. So we end up with television-specific functionality. We need to be able to associate applications with channels. That requires applications to have life cycle. Televisions have remote controls that have to operate and be shared between different services. If we have broadcast video, it needs managing. We need to know about that broadcast video. If we want to play back video on broadband, we need a playback mechanism. It's very important that television services have accessibility. They have limited capabilities, so we need capability and configuration management, and we also have stream events. So these are all specific functionality that we needed and HbbTV needed to define. We then have interoperability. TV is a very different environment. So first of all, it's a much broader ecosystem than we usually have with PCs and mobile phones. And plenty of other, thankfully for me, plenty of other speakers have actually spoken to that today. You know, the multiple of OSs, etc. The other thing is that televisions have a very limited amount of software updates. A typical television will get maybe 2 software updates in its first year of production, and then no more. So the software that we use within televisions sticks around for a long time, whereas on our phones and our PCs, we're used to those software updates coming in almost weekly. And also, to make that factor a little bit more difficult, they have a much longer lifespan. We all know this, but a TV typically lives in a living room for 7 years, and then a few more years in another room in the house, whereas mobile phones and PCs have a much shorter lifespan. Also, HTML is a living standard. It's actually not something that's just fixed versions that are being incremented. It's constantly changing with new features coming in. By the way, when I say HTML, I mean HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. This was originally defined by W3C, but now is actually controlled by a consortium that I can never remember the name of, so I've written it down here. That's what the question mark circle is, because that's their logo. It's the Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, which is essentially Apple, Google, Microsoft, and Mozilla. And they're the people who control what the HTML spec is as it constantly evolves. So what HbbTV needs to do from an interoperability point of view is really sit between application developers and television manufacturers and television sets and provide a point of interoperability. So each of those versions that John was showing us earlier, they provide a point in time where we have a set of functionality that a developer can rely on that a television is going to provide. And we evolve that standard, not just because we think of new things, but because HTML evolves itself, and we need to provide those interoperability points. So, in an all-IP world, what changes? Do all of my reasons that we needed HbbTV back in 2009 when it launched, are they still all relevant? So if we look at that required functionality that I rushed through earlier, well, the word broadcast is not necessarily relevant, but the word linear is still relevant. We still have linear channels. We still want to associate applications with linear channels. So as we go through this list, they all are still relevant. They're all still needed. The only one that I actually crossed out of the list when I did this was video playback, because that is something that HTML has solved. So back when we started HbbTV, there was not a standard way of doing broadband playback. There's now not just one, but two standard ways of doing it. But all of these still remain. And I don't see the people I just mentioned who control HTML really beginning to add this functionality into the specifications. And also, if we look at the differences that require us to have interoperability, those aren't changing either. We still have a very broad ecosystem, limited software updates, and a long lifespan. So that really brings me to the conclusion that things haven't changed and that we still need HbbTV in order to provide interoperability and the core functionality that we need, even in an all-IP world. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Excellent presentation. If you have a question for Matthew, raise your hand. There's one in Slido here, which is asking, do you or any of the audience see any sign of countries other than the UK going all IP?
Well, I would say that the interest in DVB-I that we're seeing across the globe is a beginning to realization that all IP is a future, and ultimately it's going to be arguing about dates, not where. Yeah. When, not if.
So we're going to hear some more information from Ranjit later about the plans in the UK. I know that in Scandinavia, in some of the countries in Scandinavia, there's very active talk of DTT networks maybe being switched off. They're certainly winding down to having a much smaller selection of services on them than they've had in the past. So that's something that the Nordic countries are looking at for sure. We're going to continue on this topic of all IP. Does anyone have a question specifically around what Matthew was talking about? I think it was very clear and a useful history lesson maybe as well for some people to remind where we have come from in terms of HbbTV. If I don't see hands raised, Matthew, thank you very much. And you'll be around for the on-conference tomorrow, and indeed there will be a session. Thank you, Matthew. A round of applause.